suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so by attending this webinar. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. All votes are roll call votes. We have the minutes from both October and November. Could I have a motion for?
I move that we adopt and accept the minutes of October and November.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Any discussion or changes needed? We'll do a roll call vote. I'm also just getting a text that somebody's having trouble joining the meeting. So Fred Clark.
Aye, yes.
Peter Most.
Aye.
Bill Cook.
Aye.
Joseph Method.
Aye.
Christina, tell me how you say your last name.
Kużyca.
Kużyca.
Yes.
And Ananda Timpane, also aye.
Bill, were you voting on behalf of the entire town of Great Barrington as reflected on the screen?
No, I'm going to change my name.
Amanda, I'm going to make you a co-host too, just in case I lose the signal.
Great. Fred, do you have any updates related to North Plain Road?
Before we move on to that, we also have minutes of the executive sessions from January 16th and August 20th that were included in the packet.
Oh, I didn't see them because they weren't in the attachment I was looking at, but I do see that they're in the packet.
So these are meeting minutes from the executive sessions that we went into in both January and August. We held those until the issue, specifically the Risingdale Ball Field possible acquisition, was no longer held in confidence. So do you want to take these together or?
Yes, let's take those together and I'll take a motion.
Okay, I move that we accept the meeting minutes of executive session from January 16th and August 20th, 2024.
Second.
Thank you, Peter. Roll call vote. Fred.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Christina.
Aye.
And Ananda, aye. Thank you. But that gets us all caught up with all the minutes, correct?
Yes, we are up to date.
All right, moving on to North Plain Road. Did you have updates?
I circulated an email, I believe, that had an aerial photo on it, and I also shared construction sign.
Yep.
The contractor is doing a great job. They are benefiting from the weather. They have the site cleared, and they are doing all of the internal layout this fall and into the winter. They'll likely take a couple of months off from the winter, depending on the weather, and then come back in the spring and do the connections and crossings on the roads and paving on the site. So that's where we're at. Stop.
Okay. I think what I'd like to do is adjust the order of our agenda a little bit to let you know to go to the CPA committee recommendation to the town of Great Barrington before we go to financial reporting. And let you all know that we submitted a 99-page step 2 proposal. It was reviewed over 3 meetings this month. And the recommendation from CPC to the town is for the trust to receive $375,000. They're funding 1 additional affordable housing project, specifically continuing the work in the Marble Block. And they are seeing this as a first step in phasing in shifting affordable housing funding decisions from CPC to the Affordable Housing Trust. So this year they're seeing as a hybrid. I think if all goes well, we can expect to see that continue. I would also just add that, you know, like us, they are also definitely a board and different people have different opinions. And so while I'm hearing a strong majority interested in moving in that direction, there is also a lot of investment in their process in making decisions about affordable housing funds, and especially around specific projects. So I wanted to share that and share the financial report. Bill, I put the 500 we allocated in the November meeting for, or up to 500 for advertising fees related to the ADU pilot. I split that over the second quarter and third quarter.
Okay.
And they're just projections. So if that's, as you keep me updated and Chris keeps me updated on how the actuals flow, I'll make adjustments.
Yeah, I've given that over to our new PR person.
Great.
I gave them all materials and all, so.
Great. And then I have a request that we allocate an additional $700 for the grant writer. Andy does this as a former town resident on a reduced, he gives us a huge discount and does it at $50 an hour. He put in 24 hours. He wants to give us some of those hours, and we had $300 remaining in our previous allocation from the report writing. So I make a motion that we allocate an additional $700 for the grant writer, making that a total of 1,000 allocated.
You remind me what grants he's writing? Is it just for the CPC or?
Oh, let's get a second first.
Second.
Wait, what? Sorry.
You have to have discussion. Second.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, he worked on the CPC grant with me. I put in maybe 8 hours and he put in 24.
So the what's the additional 700 for?
The 700 is to pay for that.
Okay, so it's like retroactive.
Yeah, I didn't have a sense of, we hadn't finalized our strategy and how much time we would need to put into it in November to bring to you. And I apologize for that, but.
And would it be an argument in favor of, so the town is paying someone to prepare an application to the town? Is that my understanding? And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if I'm the only one who thinks that might be an inefficient process.
I hear you. I think I'm of 2 minds of it, right? So on the one hand, I think that there's a much more efficient process that is possible for the town. that one board is not applying to the other board, but there's a different decision-making process around it. We aren't there yet. And other departments that apply to CPC have a staff who does the application. We don't, because Chris is also running the CPC process. So we made a decision last spring to add basically some administrative capacity. So the way I look at it is, until we can get to a more streamlined process with all of the parties on board with that, this is a good solution for an understaffed board.
I'm in favor of the expenditure, and I would be also in favor of a more streamlined process where this procedure wouldn't be necessary.
Yeah, me too. Fred?
I point out that and Anna just mentioned that the report turned out to be 99 pages. It's an amazing document, and a great deal of work went into it. And I share your concern, Peter, that, and Ananda expressed that it's a little clunky, but I think it's for benefit. I also think that since we formed in 2017, we've had a budget for administrative overhead and assistance that we've never come close to tapping into its allocation. So I think that if we need to do it now, yes, and obviously the result was good. We needed help to get us over the hump.
And I will say that I do think that putting together it's extremely comprehensive what Andy and I did, and that was a intentional strategy, because there was a narrative that had developed around the CPC process and the trust that left the impression that the trust was less than a professional body. And it was difficult for a range of reasons. It was difficult for members of CPC to grasp the full scope of the work and level of professionalism of the Affordable Housing Trust. So that the strategy Andy and I crafted was really about making all of our work and the depth and professionalism of it really apparent and evident. So each program area was described in the body of the narrative and then accompanied by appendices that had all of the details of our work in that area in the last year. And members of, and Joe, I do see your hand and I'll call on you next. There were definitely members of CPC who referenced the full scope of the document that we provided in the arguments they made. So I feel like strategically it really paid off and is what got us close to the 400,000 and puts us in the position to get where we want to go. And in my ideal world, maybe we're looking at one more year of something this robust and then being able to get to a place where the town has kind of a different idea about how this works. Joe, I'll pass this to you.
So the 99-page document, do we have that yet?
It's been available since we submitted it through CPC documents, but I just tonight sent out a copy to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, so I had the same misgiving about the inefficiency, I think, at first when I heard it, but there's also been talk in the past about maybe there should be a funded affordable housing administrative position. And I actually agree with that because I think someone needs to be focusing on it. So in that sense, that's like a $1,000 down payment towards that position. So I think I'm actually comfortable with it.
All right, I'll call a vote. I'll start with you, Joe.
Can you just recap the vote, please?
Mm-hmm. It's the motion is to allocate an additional $700 for the grant writer. So it comes to a total of 1,000. And Peter most seconded. And Joe, I'm doing the roll call, starting with you. Aye. Christina?
Muted.
Muted.
Sorry.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Yeah, okay, so I am totally for, using that $700 for paying for the, if that's what the question is.
It is, yeah.
Okay, good.
Peter,
Aye.
Bill,
Yes. Also, for some reason, my video has been muted by the host.
I don't think
Change my name.
so. Tell you what, we'll
well,
fix it.
can I have your vote before you?
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm also aye.
There we go.
Great.
So Fred
There we
can
are.
turn your
Aye.
camera.
Yeah, it's a power that we have that we don't tell you about until we actually need to wield it.
Eileen Mooney has a question. Fred, can you allow her to ask her question?
Yes. Go ahead, Eileen.
All right, I was busily talking, thinking I was already unmuted. Just as a reminder, before a town board votes, there's a bylaw recently adopted that says the audience is supposed to be able to give comments, brief comments. But who is the grant writer? Andy, what's his last name?
Andy Reynolds.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen.
She's right, so we should do that.
She is correct, and usually we do that for larger discussions pretty regularly, and it's also my understanding that it's an advisory. It was an advisory vote.
Can we just make a blanket statement that if anybody attending would like to comment on a motion, they should use the hand function?
Sure.
Sure. Eileen, yes.
No, I don't have anything else to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Your hand is raised. There you go. Okay. So that moves us out of financial reporting. I'm just looking at the time. I want to make sure we have adequate time for the other agenda items that might require discussion or vote. The ADU pilot program, Bill, do you have any updates that you would like people to be aware of in terms of advertising, et cetera?
We did put an ad in the shopper's guide, and then it's gone to the new town PR person whose name escapes me, but I sent him the materials, said we should try and put an ad in the shopper's guide every other week.
Great.
And I've put up some stuff on social media. I think we've had some responses as well. There were some questions from Construct. You were copied on those, I think, Ananda.
Yeah. And my intention, I've reached out to Jane. I'd like to talk with, I'm going to check in with Jane about, I think some of the questions that are coming to us actually can stay inside Construct. The answer is in the document we gave them. So I'm just doing a process check with Jane. And then I thought in January, I'd come with a more detailed update from Construct, if that makes sense. Joe?
Just wondering if have they been having any inquiries?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Do you have any idea of the scope, number?
Not at this point, but I could come back in January with that.
I shared screenshots in the packet of what Bill's put on our website and Construct's website for those things. So there's things in the packet, which
Okay.
Okay. moving to the Affordable Housing Tax Exemption Subcommittee report. I suspect this may need to be a discussion, so it's appropriately placed next to old business. Can hand that over to you, Peter. Let me know if you want me to share anything at my screen. I have the packet pulled up.
Sure. Since the packet was published, I think what I'd like to do is simply walk through some of the key points, and I'm going to, for purposes of brevity, not repeat everything in the memorandum. As you know, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Tax Exemption Subcommittee met on December 4. The members were Bill, Krisha, and myself, and we did so to go over the October 2023 act that was implemented permitting municipalities in the state to provide for tax exemptions under where there have been an application for a new unit or a unit of residential housing to be rented on a yearly basis pursuant to certain criteria. The criteria using HUD guidelines that we are recommending is 100% AMI, although the statute would provide that it could be as much as 200% AMI. We also recommend, and following the statute, that an occupant in a new rental, in an affordable housing rental unit, pay no more than 30%. Let me step back a moment and just give a little more context to the statute and what we're intending here. Under the act, the town would be permitted to make a portion or all of real property tax exempt under certain criteria. The criteria are that the applicant, which would be the homeowner, provide a rental unit that meets those provisions we just discussed, 100% AMI, and paying no more than 30% in income. And for that portion of the real property, the dwelling portion of the real property that is being rented can amount to an entirety of the property tax exemption or some portion. In the memorandum, we gave an example where there was a triplex. Each one of the units in the triplex was 900 square feet. And one of the 3 units in the triplex was going to be rented on an affordable housing basis. In that example, the property owner was paying $12,000 a year in property taxes. Now that, as an applicant, they're offering this new unit following the criteria we discussed, they would get an exemption, since it's 1/3 of the $12,000, of $4,000 a year. The program would have no age-related criteria for qualified renters, and it would apply to residential units, which may include ADUs. And I emphasize that because the subcommittee believed that this would be a terrific program to foster the ADU program that we encourage and that the town adopted at last year's town meeting. So let me get to our recommendation. We recommend that to qualify, renters earn no more than 100% of AMI, that they pay no more than 30% of the occupant's monthly household income. The applicant need not be domiciled in Great Barrington. We recommend that to minimize the fiscal impact of the tax exemption on the town, the property tax exemption in any one fiscal year be limited to $100,000. The proposed budget for 2025, the town's budget is $46 million. So we think that $100,000 is reasonable. We recognize, I think everybody on this committee recognizes, that there is an absence of affordable housing in Great Barrington. What we are trying to do is incentivize bringing new units online. And the $100,000, while not an insignificant amount, is when compared to the town's $46 million, would be money well spent, particularly given the lack of affordable housing affecting our community. There is one additional wrinkle. We believe that the tax exemption should only be applied to new affordable housing rental in Great Barrington. I'll use an example. Richard Stanley rents a number of apartments well below, excuse me?
I now know that it's 27 apartments.
Oh, 27, excuse me. Right, because he was just applying. So he has 27 apartments, and he provided to the CPC a chart reflecting what percentage of AMI. And Mr. Stanley is to be congratulated. He's doing exactly what you would like. He's making 27 units available to individuals earning far less than 100% AMI. But Mr. Stanley does not need to be incentivized to do something that he's already doing. And what we are trying to do is create additional rental units. So for that basis, we think applicants should only be applying for new units and not, if Mr. Stanley, if you're watching, thank you for what you're doing, but this is not an exemption that you need since you're already doing the right thing. That's our recommendation. There might be questions.
Fred, I just want to let you know that Chris Rembold is here if you want to promote him to a panelist.
Sure.
And then I thought, before moving into discussion, I just wanted to start, are there any clarifying questions for subcommittee members?
Well, yeah, I'd like to know if it's time limited.
So once the program has been approved, it must exist for 3 years. An applicant in year 1 who is approved, as long as the renter doesn't change, will continue to be able to use that program for at least 3 years. However, annually, the owner of the property, of the dwelling, will need to confirm through the application process that the renter continues to qualify based on AMI and income requirements.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. If somebody applies, can they continue to reapply for many years?
So
So this new unit that you're creating, are we creating it for a time period or yearly? And if is it renewable infinitely?
which of those questions did you want me to answer?
Creating the unit, but what we're like, so I just want to, for your question, Fred, are you asking if about the time limit? Is there a time limit on the tax exemption for the new unit?
How many years in a row will the tax exemption go for the person?
Okay.
When you create a new unit, do you just get 1 year of tax exemption? Do you get 5, 15?
Okay. The applicant on year 1, if accepted, may maintain that unit under this program, which will come up again in the future, presumably for consideration, for a minimum of 3 years. And in looking at the statute, I believe the reason for that is it's trying to promote construction of new housing units. And I don't have the legislative history, but it would make sense to me what the state is trying to do is also promote new construction. So if someone is investing in a new unit, they should be able to make some portion of their investment back. But to be specific on your question, applicant A is accepted, the application is accepted. The unit is going to be used by an individual who is qualified under the terms we've discussed. That unit will stay in the program if the dwelling owner wants it to for at least 3 years, if that's what the dwelling owner wants. However, the wrinkle is that the owner will need to establish with the town annually that the renter continues to qualify. So if the renter does not qualify, then the dwelling owner will not be able to utilize the exemption. Did I answer your question, Fred? I hope so.
So it's 3 years?
3 years, but it's not guaranteed. It's 3 years as long as the
Sure.
Right.
What about year 4?
Go ahead, Bill.
I believe that a town meeting has to vote again after 3 years to continue the program.
Okay.
So
But
it's
can
not,
the original, I'm sorry.
so the year 4 question has nothing to do with the applicant. It is defined by the statute saying that the town has to vote every 3 years to renew the program.
That's correct. The program has a sunset provision of 3 years.
But if the applicant comes in year 4 and says, I invested all this money, I'm still in the program, I still have a income qualified tenant, but it's no longer a new unit.
Well, Fred, Peter, go ahead, or Peter or other subcommittee members, please go ahead and answer that. And then I just want to make sure that we go to Joe, who had I don't know if Joe had a different question than the one he asked, but his hand had been up.
Bill, do you want to take a shot at it, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, it's a 3-year program. And it's either renewed or not renewed. So it isn't year 4, that's year 1 again. And there's an application window in which, and I believe in the memorandum we described, it's going to be on a first come, first served basis. An individual that did the right thing in 2025 cannot be assured for the next 20 years that unit is going to remain in the program.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like if you said it's not new after 3 years, that would make sense. But it's like, when does something stop being new? My question. So I think you kind of answered my question, which is just $100,000. You're saying because it's going to be a first come first served, so it can get exhausted.
Precisely. Get those applications in by July 1. In the example that we gave, that was a $4,000 example. These are steps, not giant leaps, because the tax exemptions can be exhausted relatively quickly, depending on the amount of the property tax.
Are there any other clarifying questions before we move into discussion? Fred, do you have a clarifying question?
No, a comment.
Okay. I think my question is, can you, and this moves us towards discussion, but I'd love to hear from the 3 committee members, your thinking around recommending, like starting with like the recommendation for a $100,000 cap versus recommending the select board request staff to look at the overall impact of what. Actually, let me back up a second. I may already know the answer from what you just said. Is it the statute is what is limiting it to new construction, or is that your recommendation?
No, the statute doesn't have that as a necessary provision. That is a recommendation.
The subcommittee is making 2 recommendations that would narrow the impact initially. One would be the $100,000 cap, and the other would be it would only be new units offered, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
So can you tell me your thinking about taking that approach versus recommending to the select board that they work with town staff to look at the impact of opening it to all affordable rentals?
Bill, do you want to go first, or do you want me to, or Kristen?
I'm fine.
Well, I was thinking we don't need to impact town staff at the moment.
Fair enough.
And my thinking on that is, well, one, with respect, if your question focusing specifically on the new units, and I'm going to call it the Richard Stanley issue. Richard doesn't need to apply to be incentivized to do something that he's already doing. So that's the new unit aspect. And on the $100,000 aspect, the subcommittee did consider various values. And we appreciate that the town has many fiscal responsibilities, and I don't need to list them all here, although I could say bridge, high school, water, but I won't. And so
Anytime we say bridge out loud, I feel obligated to say the state money pays for the bridges. Okay, now I'm done.
that's fair. So no, we recognize that we want this program. We need new units, but we also want to be fiscally responsible. And again, the amount can change, but $100,000 seemed reasonable. The subcommittee did discuss that point, and that's how we concluded. That's what we came to, I should say.
Thank you. Fred?
Yeah, a couple things. I like this idea. I think as we work on affordable housing aspects, it's become incredibly clear that nobody's going to be able to buy our way out of this crisis. And we need to look for ways to incentivize, as Peter's word, and use any tool in our toolbox to encourage affordable housing. Second point, when we were workshopping the ADU thing, I think Bill in particular was very concerned that someone could be building an ADU, which is one thing that we want, but suffer a tax impact for doing the right thing, basically. And so I think that it goes hand in hand with the ADU incentive program and the ADU bylaw that the town has successfully championed before anybody else. So those are my two comments.
Joe?
Yeah, the only sort of thing that I see is that, yeah, why limit ourselves to 100,000? Just like maybe leave it more open-ended as a recommendation. There is some discussion of what's the perennial thing that comes up, the residential exemption. And that's a whole powder keg, but the residential exemption can be a way to balance out shortfalls by basically pushing on the second homeowners. But just saying that kind of we leave that kind of heavy politics to the select board.
Yeah. Peter?
So I think, I'm relatively new to being on town committees. Is it awkward to make a suggestion that would be contrary to a recommendation in a memorandum that you provided?
I think that we, I think that each board sets its own tone, and I think that we generally are a group that is comfortable doing a fair amount of live workshopping. So,
all right,
I think you're fine.
I think it would be better for us to be able to provide to the select board a memorandum or suggestion or recommendation with a solid number attached. I'm not sure that $100,000 is enough, given all of the affordable housing units that we really would like to see in Great Barrington. My preference would be that the recommendation to the select board be at $150,000. The select board, of course, it is a political body and it is closer to the budget, and it may make a determination that it should be 100,000 or 200. But as an affordable housing trust fund, should we not be going to the board trying to get more? And let me say this. We used to joke at my old firm that when you wanted 1 week of vacation, you asked for 3. So we may not be asking for enough.
I agree.
Christina, do you want to say anything
I
more?
agree. I think we can ask for way more than we will be expecting them to grant us.
Fred, and then I have a comment on that.
In your example, Peter, the tax credit was the equivalent of $4,000. I'll just point out the simple math that 100,000 yields 25 new affordable units accepted into this program, albeit not in 1 year, but over a course of 3 years would be the budget. I would think that provision of the law regulation could be changed. If after the first year you've got 25 applicants, you've already used up your allocation for the next 3 years, I think that would be up to the select board then to go back and expand the thing. But I would be absolutely thrilled if there were 25 participants in this program.
So may I address Fred's point?
Sure.
So Fred, one thing I want to clarify, that 4,000 in year one isn't guaranteed to that dwelling owner in year two, because, and I think we know individuals that rent homes move in and out. So it is, if the renter in year one moves out, the applicant has to come back. So that it's not as if we're dedicating $4,000 to that dwelling owner for continuous 3 years. My example was simple math, and is actually math that came from the example that was used by the state. I don't know, and maybe I should have checked before this meeting, whether it's based in reality. I don't know if a 3-dwelling unit in Great Barrington or a duplex in Great Barrington is going to have real estate tax of $12,000. It likely, I would suggest, might be 18,000. So if it's 18,000, then it's a $9,000 cut. And so now we've just cut the affordable units from 25 down to closer to 12, 10, 11, 9, 12. Let's go with 11.
Listening to this discussion, the thought I'm having is, what if our recommendation to the select board was more focused on, here's the mechanisms we recommend to make this work in our community, rather than us trying to figure out what the right amount is when we're not a board that sits looking, like, we don't engage in that work with the finance committee. So I'm wondering if that number 4, item number 4 of the recommendation could become like, we recommend that the select board adopt a cap, a per fiscal year cap. And our recommendation is that you don't go lower than this or you won't get enough units, but that we recommend that they actually maximize that. But again, I'm just thinking about, like, we're not in the ideal position to really know how far it can get pushed and have the town's finances work. And I do think you're right, Peter. Our job is to really advocate for mechanisms that will maximize the affordable units available. The other thing I'm always less than 100% clear about, and we worked through this on the ADU pilot, but in this case, I would love to get some outside information about, is the mechanism, like, so if, like, to not confuse people. So let's say my friend has an ADU and they are renting it within the rent they're charging qualifies within 100% AMI, and they rent it to a tenant who is income qualified. And assuming the town would have a verification process, it's verified. But in year 2, that tenant got a raise or something happened and they're now just a little bit over income qualified. My concern is that the current structure we're talking about applies pressures to landlords to have a month-to-month lease.
No, I'm sorry, just because I don't want it has to, one of the requirements is it be a year lease. There are no month-to-month.
Even a year lease, so that there's pressure to push a tenant out that earns a little bit more. And I have concerns about any policy we participate in that causes more housing instability. So I would love to get some outside expertise from larger organizations that provide housing that has to be income eligible, about how to make that work the best way possible.
Well, the state law permits a municipality to set it at 200% AMI. So which the subcommittee determined that we are focused on affordable housing. Although, and I won't go down the road discussing with you the need for workforce housing also, but we could set the AMI number higher. But what you're suggesting is the ADU owner maybe would be reluctant to somebody who is borderline with this program because they know the following year, if they get a raise, they may fall out of the program. Do I have
Well,
that
or
right?
they rent it to them that year, but then they find out they fell out of the program and they don't renew the lease.
Well, at that point, you fall into the other provision in our recommendation is, which they've now lost the right. There's a 3-year. We don't want people gaming the system. I didn't go through this in my presentation earlier, but in the memorandum, we described to avoid people gaming the system. No unit that had previously been rented can then be utilized to get into this program. We're trying to avoid evictions. So in order for people not to game the system, if you are currently renting a unit, you cannot evict somebody and then put somebody in who fits into the program. That's how we prevent that.
So in this theory, in this hypothetical, and Fred, if you'll bear with me, I'm still just trying to make sure I understand. In this hypothetical, my friend, let's say her name's Anne, is renting to a tenant and they're income eligible, and Anne applies to the program and the ADU is tax exempt. That's really helpful to her. Going into year 2, as far as she knows, she's renting to the same tenant, but then she finds out that the tenant earned just a little bit more and they're no longer income eligible. In year 2, then you're saying that she
Cannot be
her
evicted.
options
In
are
year,
that
in year two, in year two,
she
the
can
application will be denied. So it's an annual application that's denied.
so her application will be denied. And if she decided to not renew the lease because of that, her application would still be denied, even if she rented somebody who is income
Correct.
eligible.
At that point, so if you return to the memorandum, it's this last sentence. To prevent gaming of the system, any currently rented unit may not apply for exemption earlier than 3 years following the departure of the current qualifying rental occupant. We are trying to prevent gaming.
So the person might not be evicted, but in the same time, the ADU owner is losing the incentive. I didn't realize that. I understand, Ananda, your concern here.
And then the way to address, I think the way to address your concern, and it's a legitimate concern, of course, would be for us to permit the program to be at let's say 125% AMI. Now keep in mind, AMI increases annually, so if it should capture salary increases, but perhaps it doesn't in that instance. A landlord looking at a potential applicant may see somebody that is 90% AMI and they might be concerned, but then we've built in a buffer for that dwelling owner, knowing that that applicant can actually earn up to now 125% and stay in the program.
I want to give Fred a chance to tap in what he was thinking about, and I'm going to mull over what you said. I have a thought, but go ahead, Fred.
I will just tell you that any developer that I know, any person who's contemplating this, would find this incentive too uncertain to rely on it. So that I don't think that they would make investment decisions based upon what's effectively a 1-year token grant. I do think that taxes are a big burden and a consideration when you're building a new unit, but the way your program is structured right now, there's only a 1-year certainty that if someone went forward with this, and even if you kind of made it so that say your tenant in your hypothetical qualified at 100% AMI in the first year, and you wrote in your for renewal, you wrote in an escalation clause that said in second year they could be 120% AMI or 130% AMI for fourth year, so that you don't end up evicting tenants, but you still have that gateway of 100% AMI going into the program. That's fine, but my basic point is I don't think it's substantial enough to make anybody make a financial investment because of this.
Thank you, Fred. Bill, I see that your hand is raised. I want to check process here a little bit. For subcommittee members, are you hoping to wrap this up tonight and vote, or are you open to continuing this? What's your sense process wise of where you want to go with this?
My belief, the subcommittee was hopeful that the memorandum would have been so fantastic and our arguments so strong that the full committee would would adopt it or some iteration of it after discussion and send it on to the select board. We are mindful that we're getting towards town meeting process, and we want to make sure the train doesn't leave the station.
Great, I gotcha. All right. I'm going to try and get us there. All right, Bill.
So when I was sort of running numbers on building an ADU and so forth, it seemed as if a tax break would sort of be the linchpin that would make it affordable for someone to actually build an ADU and be able to rent it affordably. And without that, it's a much smaller window to be able to rent something affordably and not go broke. But the 3-year limit is, when I think of that, it would be something that would have to just go on for as long as you rented it to someone affordably. So it's a little problematic in terms of encouraging someone to build an ADU, counting on that to go on for several years rather than just 3 years. But
so here's my thought on process. One, I think that we could vote right now and pass the first part of your recommendation, which is that the trust vote and that we make an official vote in favor of adoption of affordable housing property tax exemption in Great Barrington. So I think we could definitely do that. On the second part of your recommendation is that we make a specific recommendation to the select board. And I just want to reflect back to you where I hear the tension points and make sure that sounds right. So I hear that on items 1 through 3, I haven't heard any serious discussion that we change that. So item 1 is that renters shall earn no more than 100% AMI at the time of lease, given that we're having kind of this other discussion about what happens in other years. 2, that there's a 30% of the occupant's monthly income, household income cap, and 3, that the landlord doesn't have to be a full-time resident of Great Barrington. Is anybody that disagrees with any of those things? Great. So our areas of discussion are really around 4 and 5. So I'd like to suggest that we modify 4 to make the recommendation be to the select board that to minimize the fiscal impacts of the tax exemption on the town, property tax exemptions shall be capped in any one fiscal year. And our recommendation is that the select board set that cap, but that cap should be no lower than 150,000. I'm seeing nodding.
I'd
Joe,
go with that, yeah.
Yeah, Joe, you're the only person I can't see. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
Great. So, and then that just leaves us with 5, which I'm struggling still to understand the 3-year part, but let's put that aside for a second. I think, Fred, what you just suggested is actually like marrying your suggestions with Peter makes sense to me, that the original lease has to be to somebody at 100% AMI, but then you build in, you use that threshold that the actual law gives us of up to 200% AMI, you use that to leave room so that the tenant can, that's one tenant can stay in that property and have that rental remain eligible, because we originally rented to somebody at 100% AMI, and they're then fall, I mean, you could make it really simple, and then in subsequent years they fall under the 200% cap, and we don't even have to, I mean, it's up, I'm open to however we want to do that.
I didn't raise my hand, but I think that's a brilliant suggestion, Fred.
Joe, you have a
Yeah.
comment?
Well, I'm just so yeah, I like that. I like the simplicity of just saying like in subsequent years, just do 200% AMI, because Fred's argument is that it's about the certainty that the developer needs. Yep. And I think then maybe you look at taking out the 3-year language, because you don't need it anymore, I think.
Well, so that's where I wanted to clarify, because I heard Peter say that there's that, and I'm going to try and say this back to see if I understand, Peter. The legislation has a 3-year window.
Sunset provision.
Sunset, that is like the whole municipality has to decide every 3 years to continue the program.
That's correct. And also it's not only that, but the statute, you want to let people know that if they have a home in the program, they won't lose it. It's not going to be ended on year 2. Therefore, they wouldn't invest.
So my question then is the last sentence of 5, where you reference 3 years again, is that necessary if the sunset provision's already in the legislation?
No. Actually, I don't think, and I've done a poor job of communicating the last sentence of section 5. That 3 years has nothing to do with the other 3 years that are referenced in the statute. I'm going to call that the Richard Stanley problem. What we don't want, Richard Stanley is already doing the right thing. He's renting 27 units of affordable housing. That is terrific. What we don't want Richard Stanley to do is be incentivized to evict all 27 of those tenants, or it might be 54, or who knows, whatever multiple thereof, and then put those units into the system and apply for this tax exemption.
I understand.
That is the gaming of the system. We don't want to create evictions.
So what you're really establishing in that last sentence of number 5 is that there's a 3-year waiting period for anybody who is currently an owner of a rented affordable unit before they can apply for this.
Exactly. And,
okay.
And by the way, just for the record, I have no expectation Richard would ever have done any of those things.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable using a specific person in an hypothetical. But...
Okay, I apologize. I meant to say, let's RS. Let's say there was RS would not have done that.
Yeah. And so I'm feeling clearer about understanding that. Are there any other questions lingering about that? So Joe, go ahead.
Now I'm confused about what new affordable housing rentals mean. So in that case, are we saying that putting them back on the market would be creating new ones?
Okay. So let's say we're not going to use names. Let's say there's an individual that's renting. We're not going to say just random. Let's say 27 units. They have 27 units of housing. And this program is introduced and approved by the town. And they already have tenants. one could evict all of those tenants and then apply for each of those units to bring them into the program. If there is a unit that is already being rented on an affordable basis, that unit is excluded from application because we don't want the current tenant of that unit to be evicted. We don't want to have the dwelling owner incentivized to bring what we are terming a new unit. What we are trying to do is incentivize someone to bring on a new, currently unutilized unit. So in the example we gave earlier, there was a triplex, and that triplex was not being rented on an affordable basis, or at least one of the units wasn't. Now, someone says, I have that, I could turn that into a rental unit. They turn one of the parts of their house into a rental unit, and it's a new unit. They've been incentivized to do it. They bring it online. They've created housing. We're trying to create affordable housing.
So just to clarify, I'm hearing that there'd kind of be two paths to creating a new unit that would be qualify for this program. One is you build something that hasn't previously existed, whether that's you seal a door and you have a new unit in your house, or whether it's ground up. The other is you take a unit that you have been renting, but it has not qualified as affordable, and you rent it as affordable.
Yes.
Okay. There's a few folks attending who have comments. So I just want to, before I open the floor to that, my process thought is that we open the floor to comments based on the proposal I've put on the table. And then we hear those comments. And then after hearing those comments, we somebody makes a motion and we vote. And I'd like to do that in hopefully 10 minutes because we have some other things we need to vote on before 8. Jeremy.
So I was just wondering how you would determine if existing unit has been, like, what criteria you use to determine if it has not been rented affordably. So with the units that are already income restricted, that's really clear. But for the example that you were giving before, those units aren't income restricted. So are you was it last month? Is it how do you determine what they were rented at, right?
Yeah, and Jeremy, can I just ask you a follow-up question? Do you see it as valuable or important that our recommendation to the select board outline that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's one of the questions that I have with all of the the so-called creation of affordable housing. If we're creating affordable housing that already exists, are we really creating it, right? And so to me, there's a way that you can have affordable, right now, non-restricted income housing that you're renting at an affordable rate, meaning it already qualifies at whatever AMI, even though you're not restricting it or qualifying people. And then a way to bring that into the program, whether it's you're evicting or whether or not you rent it to some other people for a month or whatever it is. I mean, I think, is this program, are you looking for new developers? Are you looking for people that, an individual homeowner or some, to create affordable housing? Or are you looking for other ways to incentivize the big existing affordable housing developers in town to have another way to fund their projects?
Okay. Thank you. James?
Good evening, board. This is James Garzone, 84 North Plain Road. I like the program. It's very confusing. And Nana, thank you for clarifying about an existing unit, because I was confused about that. But also, we want to create more affordable housing. So it'd be interesting to find out what is the baseline currently of affordable housing. Let's say we have 30 units and that's our baseline. And then through this program, we get another 5 or 10, then we have a win. That's my first comment. My second comment is, I think it is important for the affordable housing to send back to the select board parameters, because it will show the select board, the CPC, and the town that affordable housing is at the forefront, is advising, are the housing experts, which is what I continue to champion, that we should have one singular body doing this stuff. And I thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Any responses from members of the trust?
I mean, I think ideally we are trying to create new affordable housing.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me that the statute is intended to create new affordable housing, and the mechanisms that allow something to qualify for this program still require it to be new. It's either it's new like it's constructed new, it was a unit that didn't exist at all, or it's new because it's a unit that is newly committed to being rented as affordable.
Right.
In terms of, so I think we have to make a decision. So I'm going to put out there, like, we do not have the time tonight, I think, to work through an additional set of recommendations to refine how the town should understand how a unit was previously rented, and get to a vote tonight. We need, Fred, I'm correct, there's a vote we need to do on 255 Park Street, right? You're muted, Fred.
You're muted.
Yeah,
We
he's working
do
on-
need to vote on 255. We do need to consider and vote on 255 Park Street tonight.
So we can either continue this discussion or we can move forward with a motion.
I would move that we adopt the program that with your modifications, Ananda.
Okay.
And that so that we can get this to the select board, because we don't know when it'll end up on their agenda, of course.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Okay, and I'm going to restate the modifications. The modification is that step 4 becomes a recommendation that the select board set a cap, and that cap not to be less than 150,000 per year.
Mhm.
And I don't remember what my modification was to 5. Does somebody remember what I got lost in the discussion.
We did talk about,
Oh, I know what it was.
200%.
Yeah.
Number 5, that at the time of the initial rental and income verification cannot exceed 100% AMI, but in subsequent years with the same tenant, it simply has to fall under the 200% AMI cap.
Yeah.
Okay, I will take a roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Bill?
I
Fred?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
And Nanda? Aye. And then I'd like to recommend that the subcommittee can meet again and tackle that last issue of that Jeremy raised. I think that would be valuable to pass along recommendations to the select board, but this allows the select board to hear from us.
ASAP.
And it is likely, they'll need to schedule this when they schedule this. In the interest of time, I'd like to ask if we could table the planning board review of mobile home and tiny house letters. Does anybody object?
No objection. I think we can just take it off the agenda, honestly.
Okay. And I'd like to move us to new business to 255 Park Street. Fred, would you like to walk us through this? And Chris, let us know if you need to participate in this discussion. I'm allowing you to talk at the very least.
Yes. So the issue is having to do with the 255 Park Street, known as the Risingdale Ball Field. As you recall, we voted to sign a purchase and sale, or have the co-chairs sign a purchase and sale for the ball field contingent on an environmental review, which there is required by the town, and to go forward. That purchase and sale had a anticipated deadline or closing date of 120 days, which is coming up now in January. The environmental review has been completed. It was 272 pages with all the addenda that was there. It did not reveal any adverse environmental issues, and it's acceptable to the town. The environmental review is a requirement of the town of Great Barrington. Subsequent to the last time that we discussed this, the project has been approved by the Berkshire Natural Resources Board for sale. I just want to say a couple things because there's been some misinformation that's been around. One, while Berkshire Natural Resources is primarily conservation, excuse me for a second. I had to let the dog out. While they're primarily a conservation agency, they also provide a very interesting function of being a landholder for a variety of other boards and other areas that while they're getting the money together, while they're getting the deals together, and that's essentially the function that they were brought in for this, for the solar fields. They acquire this parcel from the mill owner as part of the development of the solar field that's to the west of this along the river, that's actually on an old landfill site. Also, so the land was never conservation land. It's always just been a part of that temporary land holding that Berkshire Natural Resources provided. I'm sorry, yeah, Berkshire. The second point is this land was not available for just anybody to come and buy. That BNRC has their own internal policy that they can only dispose of surplus land for a community benefit. And they've determined that selling it for affordable housing is a community benefit. The purchase price was based upon a professional appraisal that was done in the summer by an appraiser that Berkshire Natural Resources picked. We didn't set the purchase price, they did. And so given that, we believe it's a fair value. The purchase price is $86,500 based upon that appraisal. And we'd like to go forward with closing on the property. We have the funds available and budgeted. Do you have any questions?
Chris, do you have anything you'd like to add before I ask for a motion?
No, nothing to add. Thank you, Fred, for the general overview. All of the due diligence that the town should do in purchasing a property has been done. The sellers are amenable and, as Fred said, have voted. And if the trust votes tonight, we'd like to go ahead and have the closing in early January where all the parties sign. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. And for clarification, the motion we need tonight is a motion to approve the purchase, correct?
Yes. Which
So
will
I'll take,
finalize the purchase of the land.
I'll take a motion to approve the purchase and move forward with the closing.
I move to approve the purchase and move forward with the closing.
I'll
And
second.
Second.
Bill seconded. Any discussion?
And do we have anybody from the public who would like to comment? Please use the raising hand function.
At this moment, I see no hands raised. I'm going to move forward with a roll call vote. Christina,
Aye.
Bill,
Yes.
Peter,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Ananda. Aye.
Thanks, everybody. I'll be in touch with you for a closing date and when to come in and sign the deed or the acceptance of the deed.
Chris, I know you had mentioned that we're looking possibly at early January, so just wanted to let you know I'll be offline the first week of January, but feel free to reach out on my cell.
Great. First full week we'd be looking at.
Great, even better.
Thanks.
This will require the signature of each individual member. So the purchase and sale, we were able to do that with just the co-chairs, but each person will have to come to town hall and sign the document.
Great.
Is it possible, so we expect that to be the first week of January, is that correct?
You can
We could do it now, couldn't we, Chris?
yeah, in fact, you can come. Well,
I
you
do
can
have a
come
business
soon.
trip.
I'd let you know when it's
Okay.
ready for signature, but
Which
Thank you.
it'd be
office?
nice to have folks together. It's a very important step.
Do the signatures need to be notarized?
Yes, I can notarize. That's fine.
And then so we're going to your office, Chris?
Yes, they'll be in my office or the select board town manager office.
Okay.
Which is the same now, so.
Thank you. Anything else on this item on the before we move on?
Yes, I would like to ask the board's endorsement to file an application with Mass Housing Partnership for technical assistance. This is our statewide support group, and they do provide this. Some of you may know Shelley Goring, who's our technical rep. So my request to the board is to approve that I institute a request for technical assistance, which let me explain what technical assistance might be. We're not quite at the point where we need a feasibility study, but we might ask somebody to moderate an open discussion of what's possible on the site or what is needed going forward. Anyways, this is something that they would provide as a service to us without charge to our board.
And when you do the application, how narrowly do you have to define what you're requesting, or is it a general request for technical assistance and then the specific assistance needed is later determined?
Sure, it's a general request. And I'm anticipating, the technical assistance would be for the spring or early summer.
Great.
Maybe even later.
I make a motion. I make a motion to request Fred apply on behalf of the board of the trust for technical assistance from Mass Housing Partnership.
Second.
Bill,
Yes.
Joe,
Aye.
Christina,
Yes.
Peter,
Aye or yes.
Fred,
Aye or yes.
and Anna. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
I'd like to table the last item on the agenda, the USDA Rural Development Single Family District loan. And then before I open to media speak and citizen speak, I just want to let you all know there's a timeline included in the CPC, the CPA application that went to CPC, relevant to what we were applying to do. So I'd love for you all to take a look at that. I tried to base it on our discussions about when we do different things in the year, but most relevant is taking up this winter, reviewing the 2023 RFP that we released to developers, and beginning the process of updating it. And then to your point, Fred, I think the other thing we've talked about for this winter is possibly in January and February, taking a whole meeting or at least 45 minutes of the meeting to open discussion with the public for input on process for the ball field site. So I just wanted to share some of what I've been thinking about that's coming up and keep it on all of our radar.
Can I just ask, we have a budget based upon, we have a couple of budgets floating around. One of which was a last year's budget based upon money that we actually had. And a second budget was one I believe that you crafted based upon the $600,000 request.
So
where does revising the budget come in?
Yeah. So the proposal, the proposal had a budget for the full request amount of 600,000. We've been awarded 375,000. What I put in the timeline was based on our previous discussions of how we budget. So I believe if you look at the timeline, we begin budget discussions in May after the town has taken its vote. We have a draft budget by June, and then it's in July that we're able to finalize the budget for the coming fiscal year. And the CPC is aware that that's our process because we put it in our application. I'm going to open for trustee speak. Great. Citizen speak. James.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, James. There, you should be able to talk now.
Hi, this is James Garzone at 84 North Plain Road. I'll just be quick. 375 was a great win. I'm encouraged that I heard multiple times that perhaps the affordable housing should get the entire affordable housing CPA, which is great. My only suggestion to speed up the process, which I believe the citizens already agreed in 2017 that affordable housing should be the housing expert. Why not create a citizens petition to ask again the citizens if the allotment of the CPA should be granted completely to the affordable housing, rather than go through this constant yearly battle, which took over an hour plus yesterday to discuss affordable housing at the CPC level. I will continue to champion that you guys are the experts. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any other citizens for citizen speak? Okay, moving on to media time, Eileen.
Thank you. On the number 5, on the subcommittee recommendation,
Yes.
I thought that last sentence was going to be reworked to prevent gaming of the system, etc. I'm hoping that somebody says yes, because I don't understand it.
Eileen, my understanding was that as we further discussed it, it became unnecessary to change that. My questions were initially to clarify and come to a better understanding of it. So I now understand that what it means is that somebody who currently has an apartment that they rent out, that they rent out as and qualifies as affordable housing, that they cannot apply for an exemption any earlier than 3 years following the adoption of the property tax exemption.
You've already voted on it, so I don't want to argue my interpretation. But I would hope that it would be clarified. And also in the very first line, it says is intended, and then there should be a to and then promote.
Thank you.
I'm
I will say,
basically I'm a proofreader. Thank you.
I think that what we voted on tonight, like what is a clear understanding. I think there is room to make small edits to amplify clarification of the existing content.
Inevitably, in anything.
Yeah,
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
May I just thank Eileen? I've never had typos recorded, so thank you.
We all have our fields of expertise.
We do. All right. Hearing no objection, we will adjourn.